So after my day 2 results, or journey, I guess, I felt great going into day 3. Still felt like I was emotionally free-rolling the tournament. Felt really good about how I played and how I was thinking about the limit games compared to how I usually do. Essentially, it just made me less lazy about the limit games, which is an important thing to be when playing for a lot of money, I suppose. So I came into day 3 not knowing my table draw until I arrived, and it was unfortunately bad news. I had Ian Johns, Jesse Martin, Shaun Deeb, Ike Haxton, Phil Ivey. There were literally no soft spots there. And actually, I had mentioned at some point to Shaun Deeb, who noticed me shaking my head when the PLO plat came up. You know, PLO is my best game. I'm not even the best PLO player at the table because Ike was there. And so yeah, not a great table draw, but at this point in the tournament, most of the tables are very tough. So what can you do? You just have to go in and play poker. So the first big pot that I played was against Ike. He opened in stud 8 with what was either a 4, 5, or 6. And I had an ace up and an ace deuce in the hole. Super strong hand. There were a lot of low cards out, but Ivy folded. I raised back to him. He called. And essentially it went, I think I bet the first 2 streets and then check called the rest. I ended up with trip aces. He ended up with a straight and a low. So he scooped me, and the limits were pretty big. That took a nice chunk out of my stack. The next big pot that I played was an 08. It was actually mid-conversation with Ivy when he limped under the gun. And I looked down at ace-ace 3-3, single suited, monster hand in 08. I raise, folded to Ike, who calls, and Ivy, who calls. Flop is queen 9 deuce. I have a backdoor flush draw. Check, Phil bets. And when he limps under the gun and then leads this flop, he's representing 4 high cards essentially, usually limp one-way hands, either low hands or high hands. I'm sure that he mixes in some other stuff, but he's not gonna lead this flop with like a ace 9 deuce 3, or maybe even not an ace queen deuce 3. I guess probably ace queen deuce 3 he could, but that's a potential raising hand. Like his low hands are gonna be like ace deuce 3, 6 or something with 1 suit or no suit. And his high hands are going to be king, queen, jack 10, king, queen, queen 10, etc. So my equity is okay against his range there, but I decided just to call because I would be calling with a lot of like deuce with backdoor low draws, or just like backdoor low draws, backdoor flush draws, backdoor straight draws kind of thing. And because I had ace-ace 3-3, I not only had the backdoor nut low draw, but I had blockers to anybody else having it, so I don't mind inviting Ike into the pot, I think. Again, 08's not my game, but that was my thought process. I call, Ike calls. Turn is a 5, bringing 2 spades. I don't have spades. Check. Phil bets again. I call. Ike calls. River is an offsuit 3, which brings in a low, but I don't have one. But it gives me a set of 3s, which is very likely the best high hand, especially when I block 2 aces and Phil's not representing like an ace XXX type hand. So I don't think I run into a ton of straights. Ike checks, Phil checks. I have a very easy bet at this point. Not only am I looking for value against Phil, but I'm looking to push Ike off of a low hand because I can't beat any low. And if I can make him fold half the pot, it looks a lot like I have a strong low at this point, or potentially a wheel. So check to me, I bet. Ike folds pretty fast. Ivy tanks. When he tanks, I have the best hand, and I do want to call. I think it's pretty rare that he has like a bad low with whatever he was representing on the flop, but he ends up folding, and I take down a nice pot. Then from there, day 3 went great for a while. I just was winning pot after pot. Ivy had a huge stack to my right, and I actually won several pots against him, and chipped up, as well as some other people, but chipped up at my peak to 1.2 million, 1.25 million, which was, you know, towards the top of the stacks for the day, which is great on day 3. Great on any day, but especially on day 3. Then unfortunately went downhill from there. I mean, to go into like up 100K, down 200K, up 300K, it just happens so many times throughout the day because the limits are so big, the pots get so big. But essentially it was kind of straight up to 1.2 and straight down back to about 250 at that point. I played a PLO pot was actually the first PLO pot I'd played in a little while. At this point, Ike had busted out and was replaced by John Manette. Manetti? I think it's Manette. Or Monet, I don't know. I've been replaced by Angry John, as they call him. Anyways, so I played this PLO pot. I open under the gun with Queen, Queen, Jack 4 with a suit. Angry John calls small blind. Ivy calls big blind. I had raised 25K, so there's 75K in the middle. Flop was ace 7-7 with 2 clubs. I have diamonds. Check, check, I check back. Ivy's calling a lot there in the big blind, but John is playing very tight in PLO against my early position open. He's more of a limit guy and a very strong limit player, and I don't think he wants to get involved with me or other kind of perceived loose aggressive PLO players who might blow pots and put him in a spot where he's gambling for most of his chips. So I think he's got a very strong hand. Ivy's got like a normal range, and just one of them's gonna connect it with the ace very often, and the 7 reasonably often. I have no club blockers, so even flush draws are continuing. So there's no reason to bet my hand. It just makes every worse hand fold and every better hand call essentially, or raise. I've essentially given up with the pot at this point, but the turn's an offsuit queen, giving me queens full. Check to me, I bet 40K. John folds, Ivy calls. River is the 8 of clubs, bringing in the flop flush draw, which I think is a good card for me, because had I played like a turned wrap or other kind of just kind of random bluff this way, I would continue very often on the club. Also, Ivy can have clubs as well as just make a hero call with an ace. He checks, I bet 115K. He tanks for quite a while and ends up calling. I win the pot with my queens full, chip back up. And there was the limit hold'em pot where limits were 15-30. Ivy opened to 30 on the button. I decided to 3-bet pocket 5s from the small blind to 45. Dan Smith, who is now at the table, 4-bet the big blind to 60, call, already 180 in the pot. Flop was ace king 6, rainbow. I check, Dan bets 15, Ivy folds. At this point I have really, really good pot odds and a pretty bad hand given the circumstances. I don't know whether it's right or not. I decided to call. I figured that, you know, in addition to my pot odds, there were some other ways I could win the pot, given the strength of the range I was representing, and potentially like if other Broadway cards came in, I might run out of bluffs. But limit hold'em's not my specialty. Fortunately, I didn't have to think about very much. Turn was a 5 of hearts, bringing 2 hearts. I checked, Dan bet 30, I raised to 60, Dan called. River was an offsuit 3, I bet 30, Dan called, and I won with my set of 5s. And at that point, you know, I was healthy-ish once again. From there, it went poorly, you know, like no particular spots. I remember a couple of deuce pots against Angry John where he was all in with a shorter stack, and then played a limit hold'em pot against Shaun Deeb that I felt kind of iffy about. I opened, cut off king 10 offsuit. He 3-bet button. I called. Flop was ace king 6, 2 hearts. I check called. Turn brick. I check called. River brick heart. I checked. He bet, and I called and lost to ace jack. He had been playing a pretty snug pre-flop game from what I could tell. I mean, I don't get to see a lot of showdowns. And so I felt like he might run out of bluffs there, but after the event ended, I did some combo counting, ended up feeling fine about that. I think he would have enough for that call to be okay. The biggest pot towards the end was just a deuce pot that I played against Grinder, who got moved to my table with a chip lead, and that had me all the way down to 65K, which was essentially very few bets or very few big blinds at that point. Luckily, we switched to no limit hold'em, where I can make good use of that stack. There are a few games that are good for short stacks. Essentially, stud games and no limit hold'em are the good ones for short stacks. PLO is decent. Grinder opened to 35, folded me in the small blind with my ace-9 offsuit. Blinds were 8-16 with a 4K ante, so just really good pot odds, probably flipping with his range more or less. So I stuck it in. Shaun Deeb ended up 4-betting, and Grinder called, which was bad news. I mean, it was all bad news at that point. Shaun Deeb's 4-betting range is gonna be strong. Grinder calling, you know, it would have been nice if he forced Grinder out of the pot and I went up against, like, I mean, in a perfect world, king, queen suited, but even against like queens, I have those 3 outs. But instead, they both went to the flop. I was kind of hoping somebody would bluff somebody out after that point, which grinder did end up folding the turn, and I, on a board of King Jack 9X, was up against Ace Jack. So it didn't work out, and I busted in 17th, which was actually really close to the money. Paid 14 spots. I didn't have a stack that could really wait around, so no regrets in terms of how I played the final stages. Had I had over 1 million chips, I would have played differently and picked my spots more selectively. But yeah, all in all, very happy with the way I played throughout the tournament. Happy with how it went, of course, short of, would have been nice to cash or win some money, like win a lot of money. But it was a really good experience. I had a lot of fun. You play this event, even though it's a high buy-in event, really prestigious and really serious, like it matters a lot to people and you can feel it. You play it with a bunch of people some good friends, some acquaintances, and we all respect the grind that we're all on. And in between the tense moments, you have fun. I wish that it could have gone a little bit better, but it went a lot better than it could have gone, quite easily.